And one of the reasons why I wanted Scott here in studio, because I think one of the unique things that I can offer here on this radio station is our access to President Trump. And as many of you know, I worked for 2 years between 2018 and 2020 behind the scenes, and sometimes not so much behind the scenes, in trying to secure the presidential commutation of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, who had been friends with President Trump going back to their days on Celebrity Apprentice, and even before then Donald Trump had given campaign donations to Rod Blagojevich as he was laying the groundwork for Trump Tower here in Chicago.
That's true. That's true.
And so Governor Blagojevich had met Donald Trump, I think in 2003, 2004, 2003 perhaps, right after he was governor, because he was a guest of George Steinbrenner and was in the owner's suite at the New York Yankees game. And who walks in with little Regis Philbin but Donald Trump? And Donald Trump walked up to Rod Blagojevich and said, "Governor, I've got a check." And he gave him the check, and he said that he didn't want to cash it because it was a check from the Donald Trump. And so it was a very interesting meeting, and that's how they got to know each other throughout the years and Celebrity Apprentice. But again, talking about insight from the inside, and Scott joined me this week at Mar-a-Lago, where we spent a couple of days in Palm Beach. And so, Scott, what I loved is I was all fired up knowing I had to wake up early in the morning to fly to Palm Beach in the morning after the radio show. And I kept it quiet. And, I just knew that the following day we'd be at Mar-a-Lago for what was an Uber exclusive event. It was a very private book launch party for President Trump's newest book called Letters to Trump. And it's a culmination of letters that President Trump has written and letters that he's received to some of the most famous people in the world over the last 40 years. And so Scott and I were there. Governor Blagojevich had a personal invite from President Trump. And so it was a very, very small, intimate gathering. And Scott, you were startled because when you checked in to stay to your room at Mar-a-Lago, you're walking through the living room, and who's sitting there on the couch?
Yeah, Mar-a-Lago was closed on Monday. It usually closes on Mondays, like a lot of country clubs and stuff close on Mondays after the big weekend. But it was really closed to the point where there was very little staff on premise. And, I believe I was one of 20 people that spent the night Monday night there. So there were people there, just not a whole lot of staff. But I went to walk through the living room. The living room is central in Mar-a-Lago. You kind of had to walk through it to get to a lot of different places. And I was going to cut through to go to my room, quite frankly. And I walked in, and Donald Trump's just sitting there as if, he's lounging in his own living room, which I guess
it is.
It is.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And for those of you, I think we broke the internet this week because I was able to take a photo. It's taken years to get this, and Scott is the one who took the photo of Governor Blagojevich, President Trump, and myself in the living room, in President Trump's living room at Mar-a-Lago. Scott, it was just wild to be sitting there chatting with the president for what seemed like forever, but it was probably 5 or 6 minutes, which is a lifetime in keeping his attention span, right? I mean,
it is a lifetime.
And everyone's out there, and it was a very, very small group. Rudy Giuliani was sitting on the couch, on the other side, or in a chair. But, do you remember? I'll never forget the first thing that he said when he walked into the room and came up to us. He was talking about he just saw a recent poll that had him literally, as he walked into the room and walked over to us, he just said, "I just saw a poll. I'm up by 50 points over DeSanctimonious." Right? And then he sat and talked to us for about 5 minutes about the poll. his support for DeSantis, and how DeSantis was losing in the polls for governor until Trump endorsed him.
Yeah.
And then his poll numbers just went up like a rocket ship. And so he was in a great mood because he had just seen that poll. And he said, let's take a photo. Trump said to Blagojevich, let's take a photo. And I knew at that moment, this is my once-in-a-lifetime shot. And I asked the president for a photo, and I think he paused briefly, didn't he, Scott?
Brief pause, which Mark, for you probably felt like an eternity, but it was a brief pause, and then he said, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I think we've witnessed a huge, almost like a tectonic, plate tectonic, like a shift in how Trump views Rod Blagojevich. From the point when he first commuted his sentence, and I think you had tried to get a photo at that point in time,
And he said no.
he said no. You'll get the commutation, but not the photo, because I think he was at that point, and he was approaching the commutation of Rod served enough time. He served 8 years. No one served 8 years for something like that. It's ridiculous. Get him out of jail. Send him back home to his wife and kids. But now I think he's thoroughly convinced himself it was just persecution. It never should have happened.
And he was talking to us about that with Blagojevich there, saying it's the same people, Comey.
Same people.
They're weaponizing their offices, and it's destroying our country. It's destroying our democracy. And he kept hammering that point. But what made this interesting, Scott, is this was really sort of a unique, small group of people that were all hand-selected by the president. And who we had? Carrie Lake, Rudy Giuliani, who else? Ronnie Jackson, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I may be missing a few others, but it was small.
Yeah, I think that's the politicians. I can even name them all. There were a number of his very close friends,
billionaire friends,
a number of his other Mar-a-Lago members, and I think in total, what, about 60 people in total?
60, that was it.
At the most.
That was it. And Scott, when we come back from our break, I'm going to read a couple of things from this book because I have it with me here in studio, and you're going to be shocked to learn that the reason why Blagojevich was there is because Blagojevich is in the book. President Trump hand-selected a letter that he had written to Blagojevich on June 8th, 2010. And that was included in this book. Did you get your copy?
I did.
Yeah. And you could see that the president makes a little sidebar comment, sort of a present-day comment, and he doesn't do it for all of them. There's a few of them he does, and the Blagojevich letter is one of them. And so I'm going to read that to you because I think it's really interesting. But, sort of a unique turn of events that you've got President Trump now specifically requesting to have Blagojevich there and including him in the book. And I'll never forget, Rod called me and he goes, I just got off the phone with Trump's team and they said they want me at the book launch party on Monday at Mar-a-Lago. And he goes, I asked why. And I go, Governor, because you're in the book. And he goes, well, that would explain why I've got an invite, because I had no idea that I'm in the book. And they're like, we just overnighted a copy to you and you'll have it tomorrow. And the aide actually read the letter that Trump included, and he read, his comment that he made. But you don't want to miss this. And we'll share some of the funny things about Clinton, the Clinton letter and his comment. Really funny stuff. We'll continue our conversation about what it was like to be at Mar-a-Lago in this super exclusive event where we had some one-on-one time with President Trump and some great photos were taken. But